Boom. There we are. I really just want to have the chat there. Cool. Let me get this in the way. Hey everybody, and if anyone's showing up right now, and if you're watching back, this is just some preview stuff. I'm just kind of basically getting set up, trying to block certain parts of things so I can't see myself talking, which is extremely distracting. And the stream's going to be starting for real in a few minutes. But until then, we're gonna kind of hang out. Protect Surface Care, welcome to the chat. If you have multiple accounts active, you should be able to click on the little icon in the upper right corner of YouTube where it has like your screen or your profile image, and then if you click on that, it'll tell you where you can like add accounts or switch accounts so that it's not your not your work account, if you want to try to do that. Oh, well, then I can't help you. Let's have some background music here. We're getting everything going. Well, yeah, so long as you're the business owner, then you should be fine. If you were an employee, I would strongly suggest, I don't know, maybe not necessarily not participating, because it's not that kind of chat, but definitely making sure it was cool with your boss. We're gonna give this a few more minutes before I kick this off. And if anyone that's watching back through this doesn't know, the way I do this is I'm gonna go through a little bit of background information on the book and some of the interesting other stuff that goes on with it, and then we are gonna go through a synopsis of it. And all that while, if you're live in the chat or not, go ahead and talk to me and chat and shout out, and I will talk back to you and take all comments and comment on anything that's going on. So stick with it, stick it out there, and let me handle a few more social media things, and then should be pretty ready to go. I guess I already tweeted that. Cool. So I'm good. All right. Stream's good. Ready to roll. What's playing right now, by the way, is an ambient cut of the main theme. that I've never figured out a good way to use in the actual show. I've put it in a behind the story before, but I've never really used it for anything else. So, what happened to what? Did the stream die or something? Hopefully it didn't. And can you hear me all right out there? Oh, there it goes. Good afternoon, Natalie. This is still working fine. What in the fuck? It sounds good. Can you guys see me talking at all? It looks like it's frozen on mine. On my end. This shit is so frustrating. Huh. It doesn't seem like you guys can see me fine and there's no disruptions at all. Okay, I'm just going to assume that the stream is screwed up and just jump into it. The playback's messed up for me. I'm getting all kinds of notifications right now that my bitrate, which is 225.7451, is both lower and higher than the recommended bitrate. So who knows? Punk Rocket. Oh, that's a much better name. Let me see. I'm gonna check myself out on my phone one more time, and then I'll give it a couple more seconds and hop right into it. This live streaming stuff is just a fucking nightmare, man. It really is. Let's see. Home. My channel. One more time. Yeah, that looks fine. And then I'll give it a couple more seconds and hop right into it. Yeah, I'm just gonna crack this open. Then the playback system seems to be completely jacked up, so it's not a big deal. So today is the discussion of Darkly Dreaming Dexter, the 2004 novel by Jeff Lindsay, which most people know from the extremely successful Showtime show. Oh yeah. The Punk Rocket was logged into his business account earlier, so it's not a big deal. The Showtime show is how I know about Dexter, and really kind of like my reference. It's rare that I've spent as much time as I have with that show with any media property that's an adaptation before I go into the book. Like, you know, I've seen movies and then read the book. I've even watched some shorter TV shows, but I've never watched 7 seasons of a TV show and then gone back and read the book. So it's kind of a change up for me. And I don't know if I was disappointed ultimately in the end because I had more relationship with the show than the book, or if I enjoyed it more. It's kind of hard to get after, like, intellectually. But look at this stupid thing. The book follows the investigation of the ice truck killer murders. Our main character, Dexter Morgan, we find out very, very soon after the book starts that he is a serial killer. And he is a serial killer that kills bad people, which, I mean, it's like, who does not know that about Dexter at this point in the new millennium? That is basically beat for beat the same main plot as the Showtime show, which is a cultural icon. Soon after the beginning of the book, Dexter starts involving himself, and you never made it past season 2? Oh, from Natalie in the comments, she never made it past season 2, which is kind of regrettable. The first 4 seasons are very good. I didn't make it past season 4. Well, I did make it past season 4. I think I watched it to actually 6, but I can't remember much of what happened in it. But in the book, he's starts to get on the trail of what they eventually call the ice truck killer murders. Prostitutes are being found chopped up in alleyways, and their bloodless corpses are left on display. And that's like it's a crazy thing. It's especially interesting because Dexter's daytime job when he's not being a serial killer is that he's a blood spatter analyst, a job that may or may not be an actual job. I think blood spatter analysis isn't a specialty, if I remember, because I think I read about that before, but rather just a thing that CSI techs know how to do. It's kind of like a part of a greater job when it comes to breaking down crime scenes, because obviously, you know, there's not going to be very much for him to do in certain circumstances, and it wouldn't really be feasible to have a guy on staff with a full-time job that only just looks at blood splatter. Maybe in a city as big as Miami, but I feel like that doesn't quite hold water. Either way, he does that. He's got the sociopath's touch as well, and is very good at discerning the motives and feelings of potential serial killers just by looking at their work. And an artist looking at another creator's art, he is able to discern things about the killer and use that information in order to try to catch the person so that he can kill them himself, and also to make himself look good at work. During the course of the investigation into the ice truck killer, Dexter's sister, his adoptive sister, he is an adopted person. His father, quote unquote, Harry, is a former because he's dead, police officer who adopted Dexter shortly after Dexter's parents were killed, which is the twist at the end of the book, or at least his mother. And he's trying to help Deborah, who is kind of a beat cop, almost real detective. She works in the Vice Squad, going undercover as a prostitute, which is hilarious because she hates it. And is this thing still going? Okay, cool. She's a prostitute. She hates doing this work, but she does it anyway. And she's hoping to get a job on the homicide squad and maybe solving the ice truck killers, those murders. She'll get the promotion that she so desperately wants. In her way is a few obstacles, mostly a career detective named I can't remember, Migdia LaGuerta. It's Detective LaGuerta. She's got a very difficult to say and remember how to spell Colombian name. LaGuerta's kind of a bitch. She's an incompetent detective, but she's really good at the political end of police work, which is something that always sort of shows up in procedural dramas. There's a lot of jurisdictional dick stepping that happens in the book. There's a lot of power plays just to get to be able to even try to solve the murders at hand. So that's a very interesting part of the story, in my opinion. It's probably one of the better character building moments, or some of the better character building moments are the ones that happen between Deborah and LaGuerta and Dexter and the other detectives. You also have Detective Angel Batista, who is much more, she is Cuban, yes. I think there's her first name is literally only mentioned, I think, one time in the book. And I think it's Migdia, which I believe would be Migdia, but I can't tell. I barely speak even just like straight Spanish, and like Cubano is completely out of my wheelhouse. So sometimes you see stuff and you're like, oh yeah, is that a completely new word? And you're like, no, it's just two words chopped to the sides of it are kind of chopped off because of how fast they speak. But yeah, that's the more interesting stuff. Angel Batista's in it. He is also a Cubano detective. He's on Migda. It's just Migda. Okay. So Migda La Guerta. And Angel Batista, you have Vince Masuoka, which everyone remembers from the show. He is the Asian CSI crime nerd, as Dexter says. That's his other partner in the CSI section of the police force. Vince being the guy that kind of does all the actual CSI work. He seems to be doing most of the stuff that you normally associate with that, which is picking up you know, the little bits and pieces of information and taking the pictures and filing this, and toxicology reports and this chemical testing and that stuff. All that seems to be really into Vince Masuoka's wheelhouse. And they're a great cast of characters. Obviously, they're much more fleshed out. I'm taking these headphones off. I don't know why I'm wearing them. I don't have monitoring on, so I'm just literally listening to nothing. But the cast of characters is very interesting to follow. Obviously, that it's probably one of the better parts of the book. The overall story is fairly bland. It's pretty predictable. I think I'm suffering a little bit from the fact that this is old and I'm on the other side of multiple seasons of Dexter, and I kind of know all of this stuff. I'm familiar with the plot already. So, you know, the twists and stuff didn't really hit. But on top of that, the main plot isn't very, very compelling. It's very much a police procedural, and it's almost by the numbers. A lot of what happens is stuff that you expect to happen. You know, he's going to get closer to the killer. There's going to be a point at which he's suspected of being the killer because he is a fucking serial killer. There are far less asides where he murders individual people that aren't connected to the overarching main ice truck killer plot, which is normally how most seasons of Dexter work. So if it read like a YA novel to you, yeah, it's not, in my opinion, not quite YA. It's not a young adult novel necessarily, but it's very pulpy, which is it's kind of in that same vein. In my mind, as I was reading it, I was considering it to be a very much like a pulp fiction novel, which are very smooth, zippy, easy to read, not very challenging either contextually or you know, even just in the construction of the words, which I don't really think it was trying to do anything but that. As a pulp novel, which I used to read, I used to chew through those quite literally like pulp when I was a kid. I think it's pretty good. Not great. Definitely not revolutionary. I can say the style you kind of hated it. Punk Rocket says it was the style he kind of hated it. DeWhitney Langley also didn't necessarily like it. I tried to read the second one too. I can't get into it. I think I might actually read another one of these maybe down the line. I don't think I would recommend another one of them for the book club, just because I don't really think that we're going to be breaking new ground the deeper we get into the Dexters. But I thought it was a perfectly fine book. Perfectly fine. Start to finish. it started like most pulp novels do, very strong, and then sort of ran out of breath toward the end. I got a very strong feeling, especially in the back third of the book, that he was like, maybe I could make a sequel out of this, or hopefully because it's been picked up, I can get a few books out of it. And it peters off really before the actual culmination of the plot. It does not feel like a finished novel at the end. It feels like it feels like you made it to the end of the first section of a much longer book. You know what I'm saying? Like, the overarching narrative is that he discovers that his brother is the ice truck killer. Very, very, in a very small section at the end, whereas in the series it's front loaded much deeper. He finds out that the ice truck killer is his brother earlier, and also there are multiple scenes where it's a little bit more evident. A lot of this is done through convenience. As Natalie Vegas says, I hated the ending. It was super rushed and unexciting. I kind of agree. It was very rushed at the end there. Almost impatient, it felt like. I almost wonder if Jeff got a little sick of his own book and wanted to just get done with it. That's happened to me sometimes. I've been guilty of that in certain stories. Much more in the nonfiction area when I was writing that, where I would be like, oh man, this is great. And then I would get to like a 2/3 part of it, and I'd be like, this doesn't, maybe I'll wrap it. I'll wrap it and roll. But the culmination of the plot, that he discovers his brother is this person, is all just, it's kind of just given to you. Hey, he's this person, and blah, 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 blah. There's some tiebacks, little reach backs into the deeper part of the plot in the first parts of the book that connect to a degree, but it is very much conveniently put in there for you. And you can tell towards the end of the book, too, that the writing goes from being a little bit more aggressive and kind of fun. There's a lot of really good wordplay in the first chunks of the book that I enjoyed. And when I do the reading part of the review, I'll do that part that I liked, which is basically just the first chapter. Sarah Samuelson says, Lindsay's wife helped write this too, right? She's the niece of Hemingway. Not too bad, though. Held my interest. Much too wordy for me. DeWhitney says, the second one is boring, if you ask me. I didn't really find this a very wordy book. I mean, and that's the kind of stuff that I read. I mean, I finished Drood by Dan Simmons a little over a half a year ago, and if you want fucking wordy, bro, that book, I swear to God. No, that was a year and a half ago. That book will just crush you. It's Dickensian levels of wordiness. Let's see, we've got the Wikipedia up here. I don't know if it says anything about it doesn't say anything in here. It's a very short article. It doesn't say anything about Jeff Lindsay's wife helping him write it. I wouldn't be surprised. Being an author myself, my spouse, soon-to-be wife this summer, helps me with everything that I make, so I wouldn't be surprised at all. But she doesn't get a writing credit, so make of that what you will. The second one is boring. Punk Rocket says, it just seemed kind of silly, even though I dig the subject matter. I'd have to say that too. This book was very there's a lot of like snappy dialogue. It was actually ended up being funnier to me than it ended up being suspenseful or even remotely close to horror, or even much of a serial killer thing. It's like I said, kind of the best things about it are really the interactions between the characters. And ironically, that's not going to be one of the sections I'm going to be reading, is any of the character interaction sections. LaGuardia and Deb chewing each other's throats out is probably my favorite parts of the book. But no, not overly exceptional. It's good that this got picked up and turned into a show, because I think they really breathed a lot of life into it conceptually. If anyone's not familiar with the first season of the show, the entirety of this arc is started and finished by the end. Dexter's brother, Brian, does not survive to season 2. He dies at the end. Is the show darker? Punk Rocket asks. I would say so. Overall, much darker. Michael C. Hall, who plays Dexter, does a very good job of being him. He's got a lot of it is done in narrative overtones. His voiceovers kind of carry every single episode to the point where actually during You, if you guys ever watched the show You on Netflix, I fairly frequently, while I was watching it with my girlfriend or my fiance, soon to be wife, I can't remember what to say. I would constantly do Michael C. Hall narration to her, which it sounds like this. Is this something Harry would want? Every time I see him, I think of my knives, the truck, the bags. But I'm a good boy. I need to be good. That kind of stuff. Yeah, it was funny as hell. Natalie Vegas says, right, Punk Rockets? That's why it read like a young adult novel. I felt it was teenagers talking about the show. Yeah, it was pretty distilled. There's a lot of quippiness and a lot of comedy, and most of the violence in it is pretty off screen. There's a little bit where, Dexter's killing somebody, but even that doesn't seem very violent. I don't know what it is about it. I think there's something with the overall execution of the writing where I feel like something was missing to make it gruesome. And because you don't have that peak, that like high point where the violence is, where you're like, oh man, the stakes are really, really high. You rarely see the hunt and kill from the killer's perspective too, which is part of the show. You know what I mean? The killers kill their people deeper into the thing, whatever. It makes the stakes feel a little bit lower. That on top of the dialogue and the much more relaxed atmosphere of the book, start to finish, makes it feel like the stakes are pretty low. So you're never really worried about people, which is the Pulp Fiction young A angle, or young adult fiction angle that I really see. I really agree with you guys when you're talking about it like that. It's a comfy book. I think that's why I liked it the most. It was really comfortable. It reminds me of reading old Pulp Fiction novels like that, where you just pick it up and I read it in a day on my couch. It took me like 5 hours to finish the thing, start to finish. And it was relaxing, which I kind of needed right now. So I think being in that head state kept me from really, really tearing the book apart. Let's see. Do you all think Dexter is truly a psychopath? It seems like he does possess human emotions. From Dwitney Langley. Punk Rocket. Don't see anyone. No one quite answered that. I think Punk Rocket might have said nope to it. Do I think he's actually a psychopath? Yes. As in, I think he's a psychopath in it. I don't know if it's a very good portrayal of a psychopath, because where he fairly constantly repeats I don't have emotions, I'm not emotionally attached to this, I don't feel things, I don't feel human, that kind of stuff. He still does all kinds of human things. It's just like he does all of the appropriate things in all of his relationships to keep them going, while the whole time being like, I don't know why I'm doing this, which I think is really just Jeff Lindsay misunderstanding the actual psychological condition of a psychopath. They do have emotions and stuff. They're not emotional, they have wants and needs and stuff. You can't really pry those out of people. It's just how they go about fulfilling those is off. and they don't feel guilt or shame or remorse about actions the way you should, but they still like they understand what kissing is and why like the physical sensations of sex, obviously, and it feels good. Actually, a lot of psychopaths have highly overblown sex drives because they can divorce themselves from the emotional component of it, and so just that simple endorphin kick that most anybody gets from orgasm, they go for that. That's why you have Ted Bundy's and fucking John Wayne Gacy's and Albert Fish's, because of those things. They are psychopaths or sociopaths or whatever. But I think he's supposed to be one in the book to answer that question, but I don't think he's a very good portrayal of one. I think it's more of just it's fun that he's a serial killer, and also that he's like socially awkward while also being incredibly handsome and fairly wealthy. I don't know why all these women are on my dick. That's Dexter, half this fucking book. Oh my God, his sister clearly has a little bit of a thing for him because she gets jealous when his attentions go elsewhere. LaGuerta puts her fucking hands down his pants. Rita's all over him, which makes sense because she's actually his girlfriend. And even you see it in the very beginning, one of the other lab techs, he's like, every time she looks at me, she blushes. She's always looking at me and blushing. That's the nature of our relationship. I don't understand what's going on. Like, of course you do. Like, just because you're a psychopath and you don't understand things doesn't mean that you can't, like, figure it out. But I digress. I'll continue to do the things. Punk Rocket says I ought to give the show a watch. It's been on my list. I strongly suggest giving at least the first season a watch. I will tell you that the quality goes in an arc like right about this. With this arc, right, this area being like season 5, season 6, and it's very repetitive after a while, just because of the nature of the show. It's a police procedural. Don't think of it as anything else. It's a police procedural where the serial killer is the main character. So he's always trying to solve an overarching season-wide plot line, and then in the middle of that, he's sort of like finding monsters of the episode. Usually maybe 1 to 2 episodes long. He kills people along the way, which kind of keeps the action going, 24/7. But by the time you get to the end of the show, you're like, this guy has a fucking body count of like 150, which seems excessive because he keeps getting away with it. Let's see. I'm wondering if he just keeps to the path Harry laid out. It works for him. Yeah, but even in the book and in the show too, you can see he kind of doesn't always. I think the main thing he does is he doesn't kill like normal innocent people, and even the innocent people that he inevitably will kill are like innocent technically. Like they didn't commit a major crime, but they're still like bad people. So he gets the ponder of it, but he never goes just like, I'm gonna kill a fucking kid today. Natalie Villegas says, I would not have called this a horror novel. Me either. Like I said, it's a pulp novel. It's a pulp detective novel. A crime procedural. So yeah, I would. If you guys have seen my horror review videos on the other part of the YouTube channel, this would be a 0 on the horror meter. Which kind of gives you like an honorable mention, as in like, hey, this is a thing that horror fans might like, and also VHS stores might accidentally put into the horror section, even though it's not, just because it's got blood and knives and a serial killer. But I don't consider it a horror show at all. To continue, Sarah Samuelson says, I agree. Strangely, I got more out of the book than the show. I couldn't get into the show. That's not a reaction I would expect from somebody. I would figure that the show would be a little bit better, but more all power to you. I haven't seen the first season of Dexter in 13 years. I remember liking it, but I also watched the first season of Dexter, true story, on an iPod video, which is about this big, the whole thing, and the screen is this big. And I watched it while I was on post on my second deployment in Iraq, because it was just something that somebody had on their iPod, and I would put it into the little player and watch it. And then when I finished the first season, I was really excited that the second season was there. So I can say that you should take anything that I watched from 2005 to 2009 while I was in the Marines, take any grade I give those with a grain of salt, because when you're that bored, everything is better. It's just like, a McDonald's cheeseburger isn't really like a Zagat's 5-star meal, but man, you have one of those things and all you've been eating is like just plain rice for a few months. You can be like, this is the best thing I've ever fucking eaten. But I digress. Sorry. Punk Rocket says, nope. Also says, took me a month to listen to the author read it. Oh, man. Dude, I know. I feel like I really am a odd man out as far as authors reading their own stories. Because, goddamn, they can get painful. I've heard Neil Gaiman is really, really good at narrating his own stuff. I haven't heard the audiobook for this. Stephen King cannot narrate for shit. It's fucking... It's so painful. I'm sorry, I laughed at myself so hard I choked. His reading voice is so painful. It's not great. I don't know what was so bad about the. Tell me in the comments what was so bad about the author narration. Was he dull, or like he didn't have like good rhythm to reading, or a bad voice? I'm fairly interested in that, and I don't really want to download the audiobook. Let's see. Punk Rocket says they seek sensation. Talking about serial killers, yeah, psychopaths, and that's one thing that that is true. I think the thing is they lack empathy, which makes people think that they can't understand at all interpersonal interactions, but it actually really means that they don't care about the outcome of the actions, as long as those outcomes are beneficial to them, which makes them really good at manipulating people, and makes them fairly good at high-level business and politics too, because they're fucking cutthroat. They'll do anything. They'll manipulate you. They'll whine. They'll cry. They'll bitch. They'll moan, because they don't care how you think about them, and they don't care how you feel. Not that they don't know. They actually know really well, and they can use that against you. That's why they're actually scary, and that's why Dexter doesn't feel like a psychopath. He feels like... It kind of feels like he's supposed to be you, where you, the general viewer or listener, might not normally get like all the social interactions you're into. And sometimes you really just want to fucking murder a pedophile. It's a pretty empathic response, I think. Let's see. Whitney Langley says, I probably tried to take it too seriously, lol. With these books, and maybe even the show, if that's what you're talking to, probably. I'm really glad that I went in kind of mentally drained, so I wasn't trying to do a close reading of it, and it's a thin book anyway. If I would have close read this, or if I would have expected a lot more, I think it would have kicked my ass. I think I would have been very disappointed. Good description. Punk Rock says it seems dated. Never do the audio for Exorcist by the author. I wanted to kill my eardrums. I think that might be the one I have. I turned it off. Oh shit, yeah, as read by William Peter Blatty. So it is him. It's fucking awful. We can take pause. I fucking canceled my Audible subscription over The Exorcist. I was into it, dude. I listened to like a Dan Simmons. I was listening to a fucking ton of the goddamn Wheel of Time series things. And then I was like, I need to fucking listen to some horror classics, so I have some good, recommendations for the monthly threads on the podcast. And I got the fucking Exorcist, because I was like, who's the fucking Exorcist? And he reads everything like this. And it's fucking. He's got a loud, like, grumbly voice, and he sounds smarmy as fuck. I'll read a little bit of the Darkly Dreaming Dexter Wikipedia page, just so you can get a feel. Darkly Dreaming Dexter is a 2004 novel by Jeff Lindsay, the first in his series about serial killer Dexter Morgan. It formed the basis of the Showtime television series Dexter and won the 2005 Dillis Award and the 2007 Book to TV Award. Just try to get yourself into a fucking, like, psychological suspense feel with that goddamn radio boy voice from the fucking 1950s in the side of your head. It is a fucking nightmare. Oh my God. I got like maybe a half hour into it too. Mostly because I started listening while I was on the fucking highway and I was driving too fast to get onto my Audible app and turn it the fuck off. I tried so hard to get into it, and I got down to like the next gas station and was done. I was done. Oh my God. Okay, unpause. DeWhitney says, I exclusively listen to audiobooks because I never sit down long enough to read. His voices were terrible, especially the female voices and accents. Yes, when he's talking about, that's the part I remember, is that the lady's like an actress, and he was trying to do like her voice, and it was not good. And her kid's voice, I think, too. Buh. Punk Rocket, you should download it. I'd love to hear your opinion on that. That's probably why I think the book was silly. He acted them all out, but it was funny. Not at all serious, which is what I was expecting. Oh, fair enough. His voices were sappy. Lol. Yes, it tries too hard to be relatable. Natalie Vega says, it ruined trying any audibles. That was the first and last. Fuck Exorcist on audio. Neil Gaiman is great, though. Don't totally give up on Audible. I think the worst thing about it is it's kind of expensive. But honestly, like, when you see how much fucking goes into like the amount of audio production work that you have to do, like, to do this book, Darkly Dreaming Dexter, if I had to guess, 300 pages would be divided by 20, 15 hours. I'd say it's probably about a 15-hour audiobook. You can tell me if I'm right or wrong. I would say 10 to 15 hours long. And so that would be at least between reading, editing, and then actually mastering and doing all the other stuff. That's probably a flat out 60 hours, 60 hours plus maybe of work to get that damn thing out. And then you sell it for like $5. Man. See, his voices were sappy. Well, I'm going to do a reading real quick because I want to do a reading of some chunk of every one of these book club selections. And the most interesting chapter to me, or at least the best written one, was the first chapter. So I guess it's me versus the author. Let's go. Moon, glorious moon, full, fat, reddish moon. The night as light as day, the moonlight flooding down across the land and bringing joy, joy, joy. Bringing, too, the full-throated call of the tropical night, the soft and wild voice of the wind roaring through the hairs on your arm, the hollow wail of starlight, the teeth-grinding bellow of the moonlight off the water. All calling to the need. Oh, the symphonic shriek of the thousand hiding voices, the cry of the need inside, the entity, the silent watcher, the cold, quiet thing, the one that laughs, the moon dancer. The me that was not me, the thing that mocked and laughed and came calling with its hunger, with the need. And the need was very strong now, very careful, cold-coiled, creeping, crackly, cocked and ready, very strong, very much ready now. And still it waited and watched, and it made me wait and watch. I had been waiting and watching the priest for 5 weeks now. The need had been prickling and teasing and prodding at me to find one, find the next, find this priest. For 3 weeks I had known he was it. He was next. We belonged to the dark passenger, he and I together. And that 3 weeks I had spent fighting the pressure, the growing need, rising in me, like a great wave that roars up and over the beach and does not recede, only swells more with every tick of the bright night's clock. But it was careful time, too. Time spent making sure, not making sure of the priest, no. I was long sure of him. Time spent to be certain that it could be done right, made neat. All the corners folded, all squared away. I could not be caught, not now. I had worked too hard, too long, to make this work for me, to protect my happy little life. And I was having too much fun to stop now. And so I was always careful, always tidy, always prepared ahead of time so it would be right. And when it was right, take extra time to be sure. It was Harry. It was the Harry way. God bless him. That far-sighted, perfect policeman, my foster father. Always be sure, be careful, be exact, he had said. And for a week now I had been sure that everything was just as Harry right as it could be. And when I left work this night, I knew this was it. This night was the night. This night felt different. This night it would happen, had to happen just as it had happened before. Just as it would happen again and again. And tonight, it would happen to the priest. So yeah, it's probably way too much to read all of it. Yeah, that would be another like several pages, but that's I really like that intro. He does a lot of good alliteration. You get a lot of good speed variation in the text, which is a thing that I really appreciate. So you're trying to couple the actual speed that the reader is feeling, the intensity of his emotion. So you have these nice long overrunning sentences in the alliteration. It's very much like if you were listening to jazz and you just heard that real light like on the snare, and then on the hi-hats when you slow down, you're like, oh fuck, there's a big hole there. And like kind of keep going like that. That's the kind of stuff that I really enjoyed about the book. And it's very unfortunate that towards the end he kind of gave up on that. There's another kill scene that he does where it's his hunting scene, direct hunting. He's going out to find somebody. And that hunt's fucked up, which could work, but I wish that it had that same sort of intensity and that same rhythm, because that really sold me. I was like, I'm going to enjoy the fuck out of this book. And that definitely loaded my expectations very high. And because I enjoyed it so much, I was much more forgiving, I think, of the rest of the book, which maybe was bad. But I enjoyed it. So let's see. Neil Gaiman is great, but we love you for it. Heart. Nelly Vegas, I'd rather read unless it was someone like LeVar Burton or Christopher Walken. Christopher Walken. I don't think I could read. I don't think I could listen to something read by Christopher Walken. It's Darkly Dreaming Dexter is a 2004 novel by Jeff Lindsay. Punk Rocket says, I was expecting what you're doing. It was very different vibe the author had in mind. I don't understand how he could not read that way. That just seems how it's supposed to be being pulled off the page. Tom Steckschulte is the best narrator on Audible. I'd get any book he reads. Well, there you go, folks. Sarah Samuelson says, Tom Steckschulte. I've actually heard it's very common for people to pick up audiobooks based actually on the reader and not the author or their interest in the text at all. It's especially prevalent with fans of fiction, not fiction, obviously fiction, but of fantasy. Sci-fi and fantasy people, specifically like high sci-fi, high fantasy people, they have their readers that they fucking love and they just stick with them. I don't know necessarily why, if it's just they think that person has a really good eye for stories that they like, if they just like the voice, if they just, there's probably a lot of different reasons to stick with a reader as opposed to an author, it's just an interesting phenomenon that I've seen because of my relationship to the audio world and all of the places I've gone. It's something that I've seen before and noticed. So it's as a matter of fact, out there in the chat, do you guys have a specific thing like that? Is there any times where you're like, I would rather hear a book from this reader or not necessarily the person that makes it, but like the thing that puts it out, like a secondary source? You're more interested in those than the actual primary. So like, I don't really like Tyler Bell that much, but I really like the things that he reads. So if it's Tyler Bell audiobook, I'll check it out. But if it's his reading it, I can take it or leave it. That would be interesting to me. Let's see. Winnie Langley says, the only way I'd listen to it again is if you are narrating. Thank you. I was hoping somebody would give me a compliment. Punk Rocket says, yes, campy. The word I'm looking for is campy. The book read by the author is campy as fuck. That can be so irritating. Camp is a very powerful spice it's always like welcome in a little bit. It's always kind of fun for camp, especially like we're in the horror community. Camp's like where it comes from. But I think it's one of the worst things about a lot of small productions and like attempts at horror comedy when they you put too much camp on it. That's why like Simon Pegg is great for his approach, or not Simon Pegg, but the movies that he's in, the Cornetto trilogy. I can't remember the name of the guy that does those, but he does a lot of comedy and like horror type stuff, and there's campiness to it, but it's like a little bit, and it's like right there. The camp, usually it should be a punchline. And I think if I was listening to that book, and the guy was trying to like amp up on the campiness of it, and just his voice, it would be too much. Because it's already a little too much in the book, because you have to do a lot of work as an author or as a reader to divorce yourself from the strangeness of the concepts at hand. You're in the mind of a serial killer, which is not what most people are. So you have that little node. The serial killer works for the police. The serial killer is one of the most respected people on the police force. The serial killer never gets caught. The serial killer's girlfriend or sister is a homicide detective that's never noticed his odd behavior, and all the other people he works with have never noticed his odd behavior. So it gets to be this very large divorcement from the expected reality, which can be fun because that's why we read fiction. It should be set apart. But if you don't ground it at least somewhere, something like camp is going to seem fucking awful, and especially if you're reading it. Now that you're saying that, I'm guessing he's got like a bouncy voice or like a like one of those. That would fucking completely turn me off. To Natalie Viegas, that first chapter sucked me in, and then it just fizzled out. Same, man. I mean, I know I already said it, but it wasn't a bad fizzle. It wasn't like I don't know if you guys watch anime. Sometimes you'll see a new series will come out, and like the first 2 episodes have a really good animation and they're really strong, and then like the 3rd episode, everything just completely like the ass falls out of the entire production. It's like one of those. I got a very similar feeling to that in this, but it wasn't so pronounced. Like I said, I'll probably read actually more Dexter books just to relax because I kind of like brain turn off reading. But and actually this might still probably wind up in recommendations for what it is, with the caveats that that most of you guys have given, which is it's kind of campy, it's not serious, it might not be up your alley, which I feel like is a fair thing. Like I like to recommend a lot of stuff. I don't want to be the guy that's only like, if you're not reading the canon and the highest productions of the English language, then you are not really reading at all. Like I like recommending trash sometimes you need a little trash in your life. I will recommend the Phantasm series and strongly recommend you watch Phantasm Armageddon, whatever the fuck the 5th one is, because it's a miracle. It's a miracle of existence that was made and that it's just allowed to be alive. I love it. Let's see. The voice makes or breaks it. I liked it first, then it got stale. Most of this is from Punk Rocket. DeWhitney Langley says, I did enjoy the alliteration. I thought it was pretty good too. And alliteration, it's a spice. It's a spice like camp. You gotta find your moment. And maybe it was luck on his part. I don't think so. That whole first chapter's crafted fairly excellently. I think maybe he just fell out of love with the story a little bit going towards the end because it's tied up way too fast. Where are we at? Punk Rocket says, love those movies. If you're talking about Phantasm, you're my dude. DeWhitney says, yes, the guy who narrates You is my favorite. Yeah, that actor, I can't remember his name. I knew it for a half a second. Nick Pegg and Simon Frost, they both write. Not Nick Frost, sorry, Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg. Edgar Wright, Thank you, Natalie Viegas. Edgar Wright is the name I was trying to remember. My bad. Punk Rocket says, the way he read Deb made her appear really flat and dumb. He has a deep voice, which made it all weirder. I used to whine about how not necessarily deep my voice is, considering how tall I am. I'm 6'4". But now that I'm into narrating and I've got to do a lot of female voices because I have so many female characters, I'm kind of happy that my voice can get a little squeakier. Yeah, and you know, if he is narrating Deb's voice as being kind of flat and stupid, maybe that's how he thinks of her as a character, which I wouldn't like that much. And I'll get into some of the characters, because I feel like if you wanted to be one of those guys that reads one of these things like too close and do like the whole SJW picking apart thing, you could really go in on Dexter, which I'll get to in a second. Dude, your voices are the best. Thank you. I really work hard on them. You guys, yeah, you won't see it until this next episode that comes out, but the voice that I do in the episode coming out on Friday, rough. It really hurt. Some of them really, really fucking hurt. The guy who did Phantasms did Beastmaster. Love the series. I want to watch Beastmaster, and I feel like I shouldn't, because I'm pretty sure it's going to show up on Joe Bob's Last Drive-In, or the Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs, which you should all check out. It's amazing. He does kind of like the same thing I'm doing here and in my horror and lit club videos, but professionally. So much better at it. But yeah, voices, dude. I love doing voices. I'm actually like, it's kind of tricky. I wish I was working at a higher level, because if I could work with an engineer while I'm doing the editing, somebody that's like an engineer and has some directorial understanding, they could check me. The hardest part about doing voices, you might not even like think about it, is actually that you're doing multiple voices and then you've got to go back to them, but it's your voice. So like if you do like a basic like a chick voice, for me it's just trying to make it a little bit breathier, try to up my pitch a bit. So you're like, Darkly Dreaming Dexter is a 2004 novel by Jeff Lindsay. And if you try to do like a creepy guy, right? Like a little slimy dude, so he's got like a little back of the throat thing going on, but he's also a little higher pitched. It sounds like the first in his series about serial killer Dexter Morgan. But then if you got to start going back and forth between those, because the modulation is actually micro thin, you can accidentally start doing the same voice, which happens sometimes, and it's hard to work around. And you know, I don't have time to like re-record every voice that's like slightly off, which I feel bad about and I would like to do, but my time, I literally have to impose time limits on myself for different types of work, because sometimes I will sit down and try to master something that sounds, you guys would never know the difference between like the sound that I want and the sound that like I'm getting and trying to get over, and I'll work on that for hours and be like, Sam, come in here, to my fiance, and be like, hey, can you listen to this? I'll click it. She'll be like, okay, that sounds amazing. I'm like, no, that doesn't sound good. This sounds good. And I'll click it. She says, that sounds the fucking same. Oh my God. Let's see. Punk Rocket says, we enjoy your pain. Keep it up. Thank you. I think I'm gonna be fine. I don't know if there's gonna be any crazy monster voices. There's a few next season, but not as there's not gonna be any book buyer voices, thank God. Let's see. Doing E. Langley says Santonio Fontana. Why did I say Fontana? No way that was ever going to be right. He also narrates The Institute by King. I'm getting off of Stephen King for the foreseeable future. He's my spiritual writer dad. You know what I mean? Like, he is the brass ring that I'm reaching for as far as my own creativity. But he's been around for so fucking long, and he's got so many goddamn books. It drives me nuts that you go to the fucking bookstore and like this, if this is the fucking bookshelf in the horror section, like this is all Stephen King books, and like this is Anne Rice, which drives me nuts, because I know that there's good horror authors out there, and it's not just me projecting because not that many people like know about me. fucking, you just don't know that they're there, and they don't wind up on the shelves. So it's like one of my focuses. That's why I started up doing the recommendations. I'm trying to find some smaller people. So I haven't listened to The Institute. Some people have told me it's pretty good. I heard The Outsider starts good and gets fucking garbage by the end, which is like the typical King thing, you know? That the guy, if he fucking just put 2 years for a book instead of a book every 6 months, he could go back and edit a fucking real ending into any one of them. Any one of them. But he's just like, no, it's time to write the next 15 stories. Here we go. And then that's it. Oh, I love him. I love him to death. But Jesus Christ, Steve. Oh, by the way, I can say it right now, but get it out there if you guys want to. I'm going to try for the entire next season of recommendations. It's going to be 10 books. Obviously, it's 10 books per season. I'm going to do my best to find only small indie horror authors, and I'm gonna talk about their books, even if they're not like legendarily good. So if you're an author, even in this thing, send me a message, pitch me. I'll put out a bigger thing about it later, but I'm gonna try to do all small authors so I can kind of raise the floor of this industry a little bit, because we need some compression. There's one guy that's doing everything. There's a lot of people that no one knows exist. Let's see. Sorry for that gigantic diversion. Natalie Villegas says, it is terrible, Beastmaster. That makes it the best. So ridiculous. The director-writer did a coming-of-age story in Long Beach in the late 70s called Kenny & Co., which is one of my favorite movies. I love some fucking schlock, dude. I do. If you guys have seen, like, again, the reviews that I do, the horror reviews, there's a reason I have an enjoyability grading and a quality grading, because, like, there are so many people that do reviews of horror movies where you can tell, because they're doing, like, the out of 10, you know, along with the recommendation, like, I can't give this movie more than a 3, but you absolutely have to go see it. Like, you need to see it. It's fucking stupid. It's dim-witted, it's badly shot, but it's fucking enjoyable as shit from start to finish, which is something that's very real for us horror fans, in my opinion. You know, it doesn't really extend to fantasy, it doesn't really extend to sci-fi or westerns even, or crime. It's kind of only in horror and like 80s, early 90s action movies. Shitty as worst production, 10 out of 10 enjoyability, which is like the Phantasm. I think it's Ravager, actually, is 5. Phantasm Ravager. It literally a fucking 10 in enjoyment. I almost actually cried during that piece of shit. It's a fucking, it is the most embarrassingly bad looking movie at points. I mean, rough ass green screen, bad lighting, poor shot composition. Sometimes the dialogue, I think, doesn't even link up. And fuck if there's not a point near the end of the movie where I wasn't like dabbing tears out of my fucking eye because I was so emotionally invested in the goddamn characters. That's the thing that can only, I feel like, only really exists in the horror community, which is why I love it. It's like, it's where we belong. It's like, you're not great, but I love you. That's like that's horror fans too. You know, like your overall quality, like you don't have a great job, you don't have a lot of prospects, but you're so much fucking fun to talk about Freddy versus Jason with. Like, this is great. And that's my opinion on the matter. So, yes, now I will definitely check out Beastmaster for sure. Natalie, thank you for your recommendation. I am for sure taking it to heart. Punk Rocket says, your Hot 6 story voice was so slimy, it was perfect. Loved that story. You have no idea how much I was coughing. Hot 6. Yeah, and get a lean on it. You can do that for 7 lines, and then you got to stop and just look at your phone and then drink some water. The worst part is that character's going to come back, and he's going to be in a novel, and I hope he has almost no dialogue, because I'm going to be reading all of these. I can't see myself ever like getting successful and like building up my fan base amongst you guys and the others and then like having somebody else read one of my audiobooks. I feel like it would be like a rote betrayal of everything. I'm not buying an audiobook if it's read by some fucking guy. It's Tyler Bell. You should be reading his own fucking audiobook. You getting mad at me? Ugh. I've made everyone I know listen to Hot Six. All-time favorite from DeWhitney Langley. That was really the story where I was like, it was like a ballsy decision for me at the time, because at the beginning I was just going to read and do straight reads and never do voices, but I realized that like I write half of all of my stories for no reason in the first person. Well, there is a reason. It's because that's how the fucking person in my head is literally telling me the story. But I was like, I don't think I should do voices and stuff like that. It might be just too fucking corny. And I did that one, and everyone always comes back to me like, man, what is that? It was that one short one in your first season that's probably crazy sounding. I'm like, yeah, I like that one too. Let's see. Punk Rocket says, same. My husband was dubious. Punk Rocket says, lol, giant space spider. Oh, fucking and Phantasm Ravager at the end. Or is that? No, it's just gigantic balls. I'm not sure what you're talking about with giant space spider. There's a lot of things I can think of that have giant space spiders in them. Let's see. DeWhitney Langley says, The Outsider starts out awesome, but desperately falls off the rails. I mean, that's Stephen King. I'll talk about that more in a second. Punk Rocket says, love 80s action and horror flicks. My favorite decade for camp. They did it right. And I think it's because they didn't know they were doing it half the time. It's one of those things, man. You've got to have a measured approach to campiness, because if you don't, my fucking god, dude, it gets to cringe levels very quickly. I don't know if you guys watch RuPaul's Drag Race, which I do. If you don't know about it, it's a story where a bunch of drag queens compete for the title of America's Next Drag Superstar. And the talent levels and quality and I don't know, other things all over the place. You know what I mean? And every fucking season they have a series of acting challenges where these queens have to act. You know what I mean? They have to play characters, and it's always super campy, and the dialogue is super campy. And even like when you go into it, knowing what it's going to be, sometimes it is so deeply cringe. It's like it's peeling the fucking layers of skin off the bone in my face. Like just ripping me up, man. It's bad. But those old fucking 80s, man, they'd be so much fucking fun. There was a period in my life where I was trying to be a serious boy. You know, you'd be like, oh no, Freddy, Dream Warriors, that movie's terrible. And like in your secret heart, you're like, man, I would watch Freddy Dream Warriors right fucking now. It's one of the best fucking movies ever made because it's such a piece of shit, but it's fun as fuck. Why is that your decision? Why did you do that? I love this. And you can see like the heart. That's what it is. If you have camp, but you don't have a lot of heart, it will fall apart. And I think that's a thing that they have in the 80s, early 90s horror entries, was that a lot of them had a ton of heart. You could just tell they fucking loved making that movie, and it was fun for them. And the things that they were doing were funny to them because they understand the genre, and they've always wanted to see that in a movie, and they thought that could be fucking hilarious. You know what I mean? And you don't always get that. And if you don't, it falls apart. It ends up sounding like Jeff Lindsay when he narrates Darkly Dreaming Dexter, I suppose. But I'll continue on. Natalie says, you better read your own audiobooks. I will. Everyone else agrees. Punk Rocket says, Stephen King endings, giant space spider. Oh, fucking It. He's talking about It. Sorry. I blanked. Oh man, they did their best to unfuck that knot in the 2019 It sequel or whatever. I guess it's just It Part 2. Is that how you're supposed to say it? The It adaptation. That's probably about as good as they could ever make that monster, and it was still kind of like why is this like this? Natalie Viegas says Drag Race Heart, dude. Fucking say it with me now, love. Fucking love that show. R.I.P. Sherry Pie and your whole career. If you've been watching this last season, that shit was fucking hilarious. Oh my god. If the rest of you don't know, if you don't watch Drag Race, there was a Drag Race contestant named Sherry Pie who made it to the end of the competition. She's very talented New York song and dance Broadway type person, but they found out shortly after she was announced in the cast, which is like right around when the thing actually comes out, you know, like all the filming's done, that she was involved in a lot of weird sex scandals in Broadway, some manipulation of younger people to send in like sexually suggestive videos to this, not to Sherry Pie, to another person, but Sherry Pie was kind of like enabling it. It's so weird when I'm like talking about Drag Race drama and you know somebody's not familiar with it and you're like, yeah, it's a person named Sherry Pie. So during the entire show, like in the first episodes, you could tell they didn't have a lot of time to like edit her out, so she's still in most of it. But as you get deeper into the season, you start forgetting she's even there, even though she's in every fucking scene because she's a power player. She won like 3 of the 13 challenges and made it to the top 4. She's literally like barely in it because they just edit her entire existence away. It's fucking crazy. It's something you don't even think it could happen, and then when you see it, you're like, wow, that is wild, dude. She just does not exist. But I digress. It's some fire shit, dude. Punk Rocket says there's a horror version of that. Dragula, I think, season 2 is the best. Dragula, yes. My fiance loves it. I can't watch it. I turned it on one time, or I'd sat down to watch it with her one time, and it was during like the finale of season 1, maybe. And you know they do their glamour, filth, horror, Dragula, and so those are their help me out here. The areas where they can compete in are those things, and so they're doing their filth challenge, and like there's these fucking girls are up on stage just like puking, and like forcing themselves to puke is part of a thing, which is like it's like a performance art piece, you know. It wasn't like they were just like, okay, now all of you puke. Like it was a decision that those drag queens made on their own in order to win a challenge, which I respect. But it's something that literally fucking grossed me out so bad. I was like, I can't fucking do it. I can't fucking do it. Plus, my fucking normal Drag Race hits the upper end of my cringe threshold, which isn't particularly high. Fucking Dragula is like 7 times higher than that, and just the sort of shit that they can do. And because it's like a cheaper production overall, they hit that camp section real fucking hard. So sometimes I'm like, I can't do it. But it's definitely something. If you like drag queens and you like just like, if your area of horror that is your favorite is like Rob Zombie to like Hellraiser, if it's between those two like parts of the niche, you'll fucking love it. You'll fucking love it, dude. Every episode of that looks like a set from a cheap ass House of 1,000 Corpses haunted house in like El Paso, Texas. Like it's rough. Check it out. Let's see. Punk Rocket says the new It movies were pretty good. The new It movies were better than I ever thought they could be. I will say that straight up. I did not like the Pennywise makeup when it was first put out. But you know, hey, a lot of that is carried by the guy that's in the makeup. I thought it was too scary, weirdly enough, which made it less scary to me. I don't know how to explain that better, but sometimes when you try too hard, it makes the thing less scary than scary, which can be, you know, I mean, actually, honestly, I think most horror people can understand that. But it ended up being pretty good. The kid actors nailed it. The second movie I liked less than the first. The first movie was solid all around. I would say that the second movie was too long and confused. There was something about it that kept it from being really great. it's good. It's not a bad movie. I think there's just some decisions that they made that I wasn't 100% behind. There's a lot of stuff that could have gotten cut out too. And it's odd because I remember talking about that and being like, yeah, this scene, I feel like they just added this to the movie. And it's like, no, that was in the book. I'm like, well, I can't remember everything that was in the book because it's 1,200 fucking pages long. So what can you do? But yeah, they're pretty good. Sherry Pie, R.I.P. Man. She's literally that meme where the black kid's given like the peace sign and then he fades out over 4 bars. That's her. Not familiar, but I'm definitely going to watch now. If you're talking about Drag Race or Dragula, check it out. Punk Rocket, did not see season 1. Yeah, it was the first season I saw. Sam found it and started watching it, and then we were into it. Well, she was into it. I was like, I'm gonna enjoy this from the other room. You can tell me about how great it was later. Actually, I'll talk about it more in a second. Punk Rocket says, "Ooh, can't do barf." Me either, especially if it's real. Like I don't like it. I think that's why it ends up in my stories more often. Like there's like I was thinking about that the other day. There's a bunch of times where people puke in my stories, and I'm like, I don't like puke. I think that's why it's there. Natalie Viegas says, "Vomit drag sounds like Sallow, which took me 3 times to make it through that movie." I've heard a lot about Sallow. I've never tried it. I've never tried to take it out. Like it sounds so fucking awful to me. 300 Days of Sodom is what that's what that is. Punk Rocket says, "Season 2 is awesome. Season 3 we bowed out. The contestants didn't grab us like Season 2. I've heard that. I think it's just because who's gonna try that hard to be on Dragula? You know what I mean? So they just get the leftovers that can't be on Drag Race because it's fucking Drag Race. That's where you want to be. But hilariously enough, like Dragula's more inclusive. I think maybe because of that. So they've got like Dragula had like a straight guy who was a drag queen. They had a drag king, which is a girl that's dressing up like a guy, and I think she actually did it like super deep. So she put on her male drag and then dragged up her male drag back into female drag, which is fucking some Inception level makeup skills. I mean, that's pretty deep. That's like the difficulty of trying to do a voice as a character. So like you're trying to do like Bugs Bunny pretending to be Porky Pig. That's some fucking next level shit. But back to Darkly Dreaming Dexter for a second. There is one thing that I noticed, and I never want to be the guy that's like, your book is a little problematic. But I did think it was kind of interesting in Dexter that how much like white guys are the only competent people. White guys and the one Asian sociopath are the only like really competent folks. If you haven't noticed that, like LaGuerta is like a very strong, independent, career-minded Latino woman. She's Cubano. Is Cubano Latino? Are they mutually exclusive? Or are you supposed to say Cubano when it's a Cubano person? I don't know. I want to be correct in that. But she's like, and very strong. But she's a terrible detective and very, very, very selfish. And then like Angel Batista, no relation. It's just kind of like a clueless guy that just looks at stuff. Deb is just a dumb girl who wants to be in homicide, even though she can't really. She's not that good of a detective, clearly, and she's only good at dressing up in hooker clothes. It has to get saved at the end from another Dexter, from 2 Dexters. I kind of thought it was like kind of hilarious that there weren't like in all of Miami he doesn't have any competent friends that aren't white people, which he doesn't have any friends, but whatever. Natalie says it's you say Cubano instead of Latino. That's what I thought because I think it's. Because they're from the islands and they're not from Latin America. I try to be right about it. I don't know. As long as I'm not actively just stomping on people, I think I'm not in the wrong. Oh, let's see. Nelly Viegas says 120 Days of Sodom was based on Marquis de Sade. I was on a de Sade kick and forced myself to watch things I am uncomfortable with. the Marquis de Sade will. He's the almost the originator of controlled discomfort, I guess you would say, which really kind of makes it. Punk Rocket says, "Oh damn! I tried to read his book? Question mark. It was a dated book. Whose book? I think we're kind of lost now. There's still a little bit too much going on in the stream. But I'm gonna do those, answer those questions, and then I guess I will probably be wrapping this up soon." Natalie Viegas says, "I loathe the word Latino as it was given to us when the Spaniards when they took us over." Yeah, my heart goes out to your community, because I don't know. When I grew up, I was told that the polite way to refer to, people, Spanish-speaking people who are descended from the natives throughout, the lower chunk of North America down through the base was Hispanic. You're supposed to say Hispanic. And then when I got into the Marines, and I was actually around dudes with, Mexican, Guatemalan, Dominican heritage, they were like, you were never right. you basically had to guess and just be like, oh yeah, like, Dominican or whatever, because like, it's not really, if you think about it, it's kind of odd in most respects to refer to people from that many different countries and cultures by like one fairly flat term, especially considering like the same language isn't even spoken between most of the countries. Even if it's the same language, the dialects can be crazy different. I think it's Chilean people are really hard to understand if you're like from the islands and vice versa or stuff like that. And then obviously you have the Portuguese speaking countries that are down there, and then you have all the native cultures that are still in existence and spread out and doing good or bad or worse depending on where they are and what's going on. So it's an odd thing. It's something like I want to know more about, but I don't think I'll ever know enough about to ever do right. But I hope that my little bit of effort's been, it's good enough. Let's see. Punk Rocket says, "I was responding to the Desaad comment. The Dexter book is dated." Dexter book is kind of dated, doesn't it? Doesn't it feel a little older than just 16 years? Isn't that weird? Even just, if you take out the content, and I guess maybe it's just because Dexter was a show, and because everyone's familiar to a degree with the Dexter show and the Dexter show's concept, that the serial killer solving crimes thing is like a bit overdone. But even just reading it, it feels much older than 2004. It feels really like 90s. It's got a very 90s, late 80s feel. I wonder if that's almost intentional. I mean, it's also because it's in Miami, and in my brain, Miami is eternally fucking like neon pinks and like late nights on the strips and stuff. It like Miami Vice type things in my head. But yeah, and then you have the actual like kind of setup where it is, not very overall inclusive. I guess if you have the main character is non-neurotypical. It's like he started it in the 90s. Yeah. And it's what it is too is it's that 90s thing where everybody was trying to make the next Law and Order, where it was like, or whatever. There was detective shows, and everyone had a fucking detective show up from like the 60s, and it kind of boomed up in the 90s where you could have high concept detective shows. It was no longer just like Jake and the Fat Man or Matlock. You had a little bit higher intensity things, Law and Order and stuff, and Law and Order SVU, where it was, blood and much darker murders could be talked about. It wasn't all comfy cozy as like Murder, She Wrote. Yeah, and fucking Dokes the black guy. He's a very big angry black man. Oh, yeah, if you really think about it. I think it's still, obviously, they're still basically the same characters in the show, but in the show, I think that the actors really do a good job of humanizing the characters and giving them their own thing. But in the book, man, Dokes doesn't have much going on at all other than being a very large, angry black man. That's fucking it. He's also not really talked about being a good detective. His detective skills are hurting people, according to Dexter, which is not good. It's not character I would write. And I don't know if that keeps on going into the next ones, but maybe. But yeah, this definitely feels like, the more I think about it, like that's why I kind of like this book club atmosphere, because I don't have to do all the hard work myself. I can kind of lean on you guys. Is that, yeah, it does feel kind of like it's the last product of a further age. It's kind of cool that they managed to, because I remember the show. The show feels very modern and very intelligent. It's got a very broad cast of characters, and all of the people of color, I guess you would say, have their own side things. Batista's one of my favorite characters in the show. He's like kind of somehow not like in over his head. Oh, dude, he never pause. Natalie Viegas, Dokes never says "surprise, motherfucker" in the entire book. I was fucking upset about that. Surprise, motherfucker. That's my favorite fucking line in that show. Oh, it was such a good meme too. But yeah, no, the characters in the show, they get a lot more fleshed out, and I haven't read the rest of the books. Sorry, I haven't read the rest of the books, so maybe they all get a lot more screen time. Usually whenever you see a series of books, the first one's thinner and more stripped down and to the point, and then they let the characters kind of breathe in the follow-ups, which I hope would be the case, because like I said, Angel is one of my favorite characters. He's a good detective, fair, competent, but he's kind of like a clueless guy, and he's always kind of like on the search for like a good time, and he's fun, and then he gets into a relationship with LaGuerta in the later seasons, and you get to see her kind of like with her guard down and her interacting with Matthews and stuff, and like knowing that she's like a Cubano woman and she can use that to her political advantage, but also like trying to like keep it real for the roots and stuff, and actually do it to like have like Cubano influence, not just be like, a white puppet that is, like can give them credit for being, like, oh, well, we do have a Cubano lieutenant, so, anything that we do is probably racially okay because she says it's okay. She knows that that's what they're trying to pigeonhole her into in the later streams, which I like. As a character, those are good character moments. It's deep. It shows a growth from a place that exists outside of the intentions of the main plot and the main character's needs and goals, which no one really does in this. Everything that happens, and you can say it's because, pretty easily, you can say it's because it's from the first person narration of a serial killer, which the show isn't. The show is third person with Dexter's the main POV character in his sections. He's got his overdubbed lines, but the other characters get third person stuff, so they get a lot more time to breathe. So you can say because because the book is from the first person perspective of a serial killing or a psychopath, that maybe he just doesn't have a very good view of people. But the way that you can work around that, if you guys are ever trying to become writers, and I do a lot of my stuff in first person too, and there is a trick where you're like, or a wall that you come up against, you're like, how do I give characterizations to characters who are outside of this person's view? Like, how do I let them grow and stuff? And you do it by having the fucking main character not know what the fuck he's talking about. Like, have him be wrong, or have other characters react to stuff, in like a, what the fuck are you talking about? And always make sure that your other characters, as a general piece of writing advice, have agency that exists outside of the main character's plot line, which no one does in this book. I think is probably one of the bigger knocks against it. It's also one of the reasons why it's easier to read, because you don't have to worry about the side characters. Deb's career goals are directly related to his goal to find the killer. They're an excuse for him to do stuff to find the killer. LaGuerta's efforts to better her position in the department are really just exists as a foil to Dexter's own goals, and also as a reason for her to put her hands down his pants. Dokes exists to foil Dexter's goals or even threaten his freedom. Masuoka exists as a person to just bounce character exposition off of scene to scene to scene, and that's pretty much it. If you notice that, so that's how you can tell it's not high level writing. It's kind of basic stuff. That's another reason why it probably feels like young adult to some of you guys out there, is because young adult authors are fucking awful about this, and I think a lot of them do it intentionally, especially if they know how to work their audiences, which are often like teenage girls who are still kind of in their own headspace about stuff. You know, they kind of really identify with the person who like always everything's about them, and that everything that's happening to them is helping them grow. Not because they're bad people, you know, teenage girls are just people, but that's kind of like the girl version of a boy reading stories where the main character is doing the same thing, but he's like a sword fighter and really good at combat and learning new tricks faster than other people can. It's the same sort of thing. It's real easy power fantasy type stuff. And so you see that in young adult fiction more often because kids gravitate towards that, especially if it's a duller, blanker character, like a sociopath that doesn't have any personal stuff going on inside of him. You can easily imprint onto that character, and so it makes it much more addictive because you can say, well, if I was there, I would pop in, and I would be the guy that can use my special psychic power to change the situation, or I would talk to her and I would know that she wants to do this thing, not because I've seen inside her diary, but also because I'm like a more attuned and empathetic person. I would help her solve this problem with this guy because I know what the situation is. That sort of shit. I don't know where I was going, but yeah, agency. You got to let your other characters have agency, which is why I think the show is better than the book, in my opinion. But let me get back to comments. Sorry, I kind of went on divergence. Natalie says, I love that line. I do too. Surprise, motherfucker. Natalie Villegas, please refrain from spamming caps. I'm sorry about that Streamlabs thing. I keep trying to turn it off. I'm not even using Streamlabs anymore. I've got to disconnect it from my YouTube somehow, but it still fucking does that shit. Whitney Langley says, I was shocked that LaGuerta was killed because she was in several seasons of the show. Agree. And also because, why the fuck? What the fuck? Like, that's my reaction to LaGuerta's death. I was like, her working with Dexter made a lot more sense. You know what I'm saying? She literally just got convenienced out of the plot. She was a strong character in her own right, and I think maybe she was just too strong to continue on, or maybe she's being set up as a good enemy for him. But I don't really know why she had to die there. That whole last scene, the second that she gets out of her car, when he gets to the shipping container, the shipping yard, the whole story just, for that last little bit, it's just the gentlest fall off the end of the cliff. And her arriving is one of those, as a writer, I kind of have a feel for it, and I think it was one of those moments where he's like, plot wise, someone has to get out of their car right now and scare Dexter. Someone does, because he needs to have something going on here. And he's like, what if it was LaGuerta? And then that put him in a position where LaGuerta had to, get out of there and stuff. And I don't think he had the ass at that point in the story, because he kind of felt like everything was getting way too convenient. I don't think he had the kind of creative ass at that part of the story to just work her back out. Because even in that story, she seems like a much better character to keep alive. She's interesting. She's suspicious of Dexter's weird things. She's got like odd inappropriate sexual proclivities towards people, which I always like. I like, because you don't really get to see it very often. I like a female character that has her own sex drive that's very much her own. I know in this it's part of like the Dexter has his weird like harem because like all the girls are into him. But I like that she's very forward and very aggressive, and that's cool. That's a very specific character trait that would be interesting to see evolve inside the police force, because it's not going to go away. She's still going to have that sort of, drive to do stuff. So it would be interesting to see her grow as that kind of character that's getting more powerful, that might be overreaching her bounds, and the kind of issues that could create. But instead they killed her, so you don't get to know. And in the series, she's one of my favorite characters too. Not like I like her when she's on screen. She's a very dislikable person, but she grows on you as you get like deeper into the show. Captain Matthews is a piece of shit, but I digress. Punk Rocket says her character had more potential than most of them in the book. Agreed. Sorry, I didn't read that before I went on my spiel. Nelly Viegas said the people of color and Deb felt very flat in 2D. Punk Rocket agrees exactly. Listening to the author act them out was weird. Yeah. Yeah, is really kind of all I have to say to that. If you, earlier, if anyone's watching this that just jumped in, Punk Rocket actually listened to the audiobook and said that the actor, or the novelist Jeff Lindsay, acted out most of the characters, and apparently he acted out Deb as being very flat and dull, and as though she kind of like didn't understand what she was doing, which is what you can do. When you read in an audiobook, you do layer on top of it. It's impossible not to, put a little bit of emphasis here and there throughout any sentence, because you're going to be reading it based on your impression. So when it's the actual author, there is not much room for interpretation given the way that you read your characters. I've never read through one of my own stories on the podcast and ever been like, I wonder exactly how that's supposed to be read. Like, I know how it's supposed to be read. I fucking wrote it. It's actually one of the things I like about it, is I do like and don't like about it, is that I kind of take some of the interpretation away from the reader. Which could be good and could be bad, but I think in the case of Jeff Lindsay, we learned a little bit more about his impression of women. I hope not. I would hope that's not the case, but it might be. 50 Shades of Grey was a shit show of awful writing. There's a bunch of books that came out when 50 Shades came out that were really bad, man. That was like the era of Twilight, and then the Hunger Games, and then 50 Shades of Grey. And if you guys are Hunger Games fans, I know that someone out there might have just gone like, hey now, like it. Never don't like what you like. I'm never going to tell you not to do that. I'm going to tell you my opinion. I'm going to hold on very strongly to my opinion, because I'm that kind of fucking guy. But man, I read even just a little bit of Hunger Games, and it was rough. Like, it's not necessarily bad. It's young adult content. You get what you pay for kind of stuff. Just, between that and something that's a little bit more deftly put together, like Harry Potter, I would say is in the same wheelhouse. At least the later Harry Potter novels are definitely for the same sort of audience, I would say. Boys and girls aged 12 to 22. Yeah, I would say the Harry Potter books. A little bit better understanding of the English language. You can always tell that when those books are actually badly written too, because the follow-ups never happen. It's usually people fall in love with the concept and the characters, so you basically just won a lottery. And you can even say that about J.K. Rowling too, although, Ungats, please don't fucking slit my throat over it. J.K. Rowling wrote an extremely interesting series of books, but she does not have enough chops on her own to create another series. She really just got super, super lucky with how good Harry Potter was. Same with, ironically enough, E.L. James, who wrote the 50 Shades of Grey books. She put those out. She wrote one sequel story that didn't do anywhere near as good because she just doesn't have the chops for it. And same thing with the Hunger Games person. And actually, yeah, and Stephanie Meyer. All of their follow-up attempts at additional novels fell flat because what was good about them was not their understanding of plot and the way that they write, but actually just at the time when those books came out, it was what the people wanted and the characters worked, and once that was wrapped up, it was done. Sorry. I mean, there's really no better example of that than J.K. Rowling too. It's weird seeing her later in her career because it's like people ask her for writing advice and you're like, why? Her best writing advice would be write Harry Potter, and maybe next time don't end the book after 7, end it after like 14 so you can keep making money after it. Yeah, they do read out loud well. Punk Rocket says Harry Potter is okay. They read out loud well. Our kids like them. They're not bad. They are better constructed fundamentally than all those other books I'm mentioning. She's very much up here compared to them. But it is odd because I don't think she's that terrible of a writer, but somehow in the million some odd words that she put together in the Harry Potter series, she was not able to learn enough about the craft to create something else that would be interesting. Which, like Stephen King, he can write new books all the time, but for some reason, Rowling just burned herself out, and I don't know why. She wrote the other book, Casual Vacancy, which my fiance's read. She said it was okay, and I don't know if it's good or not because I didn't read it. But I'm gonna get into comments because people are talking about some stuff right now. 50 Shades was similar to Story of O. I don't know what that is. I'm not familiar with Story of O. Go ahead and clarify. I'll talk some more about it. Also, Instant Noodle says, good morning from Australia. What a nice surprise here. Australia, good to see that your fires are going out while us in America our fires are just beginning again. It's not that funny. I live in Louisville. People are being shot in the street, and there's police helicopters over my house right now. But yeah, it is what it is. Natalie Villegas says, Hunger Games was an easy read, and I enjoyed the books. I read the whole series in a week. Twilight, Harry Potter, 50 Shades of Grey, I could not get past the first page. I think that's the case with a lot of those. I think you have to be at the right time. You have to be in the right mindset. And if you are, burn through them. And if you're not, you don't. On that note, my family used to go on houseboat trips, which is not as glamorous as you think. If you don't know what houseboat is, it's a fucking pontoon with like a house on it, like a trailer, like a double wide trailer. And so you can rent those for X amount of money a week. And if you pile on a gigantic Irish Catholic family, then it's pretty cheap as far as like a vacation goes. But you're kind of out there on the water and you don't have access to a lot of stuff. And my cousin brought a book series. I can't remember what the fuck it was called for the life of me, but it was a terrible, god-awful, trashy teen romance novel series, in very much the vein of Twilight, but not as like attempting to be thick as fuck. They were like this big. About and they were angels and literal angels and devils that were going to like a high school or something. They were all after this one girl, and it was absolute fucking garbage. I loved every second of it reading it. I burned through 5 books. I was actually like, hey, let me get the one that you're kind of reading a little bit. I'm gonna crack through it in like 2 hours. Just let me get that for you from you, because we were out there for a week. I didn't have anything else to read, and I read the book that I brought in like the first day. Whatever. But yeah, it's one of those things. Sometimes one of those, they just fucking hit, man. They just hit. But you can't ever be reading them and telling yourself that you're getting like real mental nutrition They are the fucking fast food of literature. And hey, food. Sometimes fast food is what you can afford. Sometimes fast food is what you like to taste. You shouldn't try to live off of McDonald's. You shouldn't be eating McDonald's and then telling people they don't know how to cook their steak. I digress. Instant Noodle says one-hit wonders. Agree. I guess 3-hit wonders, but if you call the series the one hit, yeah, it's a one-hit wonder. Whitney Langley says, I refuse to attempt 50 Shades. Not my taste in the least. I would say stay away from it. We've got them on our bookshelf here because Sam read it. Sam's read every one of those trashy book series I just talked about. She's read literally every single one of them. And I think we have copies of them all too. We have Twilight here. She says I have to read it at some point, which, I mean, I guess I might at some point, but I've got a lot of reading to get out of the way. And also, I could cut my toes off if I needed something to do before I got to the Twilight series. Punk Rocket says Harry Potter is okay. They read out loud. Well, I already got to that. Also says 50 Shades sounds like it's written by a teenage fangirl. It is. Do you not know that? 50 Shades of Grey is actually is a Twilight porno fanfic from the internet. No lie. The original story was about two characters from that meet in different circumstances. If you don't know what slash fiction is, look it up. If you're just trying to while away an afternoon, you'll blow your mind. But originally it was a slash fiction about Twilight, in which the characters had slightly different lives and stuff, and it got a lot of heat. I think it was actually published on Literotica or something. An actual publisher took note of it and was like, hey, if you just change this out of the original IP and make your own characters up, this could probably sell real big because it's just sleazy fucking middle-aged lady porno books. And it fucking slapped, and she made herself a multi-millionaire many times over. But yeah, that's actually is quite literally a teenage romance fan fiction. So there you go. Natalie Viegas says Rollins is also blacklisted due to her transphobia. Yeah, I heard she's a trans-exclusive radical feminist. I'm out of the loop and not really trying to get too deep on it with it because I know she's an old person on Twitter, not handling it as well as Papa Steve does. I don't know, the whole TERF versus trans people movement and that whole thing is something that's I'm completely outside of my wheelhouse in. And every time I think I have an opinion about it and I'm like, maybe I should share it, I don't. And so that's why no one's mad at me. I just keep my fucking mouth shut. I'm 100% trans rights. I want them to be happy. I want them to be safe. That aside, I don't know that much about what's going on there, and I keep my distance because I don't see myself being anything but a bull in a china shop if I got involved in that kind of conversation. I wish that Rollins was... I wish that she was... of that mindset too. She's been real weird. She's been real weird since the Harry Potter movies ended. With her random I never said Hermione wasn't black kind of things, and I never said that the Dumbledore was gay, which is fine, but it's why didn't you just say that when the books were popular? It would have been a much more interesting thing. Did you not want to bring that up while they were making the multi-million-dollar movies that maybe Hermione could have been played by a black character? That would have been huge, probably. Huge for kids in England, but hey, at least we've got an all-white cast, so what was it? Can't get myself in trouble now. Let's see. DeWhitney says, wasn't it? Maybe. Punk Rocket, smiley face, and then wouldn't be surprised. Story of O was better written. Were you guys saying that in response to my stuff that I was talking about? Yeah, I mean, for real. Yeah, 50 Shades of Grey is real weird. I still don't know what Story of O is. Somebody's got to... Okay, we're actually getting to it. Houseboats are the shit. Houseboats are the shit. And I'm glad most people don't know about them because it makes it easy to rent them at a reasonable price still. That's how you can tell I grew up right around lower middle class is when I'm yeah, I don't want to talk about how I got to go on houseboat trips because I don't want to seem bougie. This is me and my white trash family floating around Cumberland, fucking Lake Cumberland, listening to Guns N' Roses and drinking fucking light beer. We're out here living the high life. Let's say Story of O portrayed explicit scenes of bondage, spare, excellent prose, the purity of the writing making the novel seem reticent, even as it dealt with demonic desire, with whips, masks, and chains. That's a solid review out there in chat. Instant Noodle says 4 stars. Check it out. Bondage stuff is not really. I don't really like sex books very much. It's not my thing. I don't think it's really supposed to be my thing, so I can't promise I would ever maybe necessarily check it out, but it sounds like if it's up your alley, you should probably check it out. I know that the actual BDSM community fucking hates E.L. James, like fucking hates her, because of the content of 50 Shades of Grey is at times highly dangerous and also reinforces negative relationship values and roles, especially like in the BDSM community, which like gets a bad rap because, you know, it's about like being tied up and whipped and stuff, and from the outside that can seem very negative, but I've talked to a lot of BDSM people, and you know, I'm very familiar with their company. It's what it's really about is like trust and letting go. So, you know, like for people that have like a really tight, overly exhaustive grasp on life, like being a sub can be really, really empowering for them in a different way, because it lets them get in touch with their vulnerability and, you know, lets them relax their grip on their life. It's not really about being hurt so much as it's about allowing someone to hurt you, knowing that they won't do it in a bad way, which does not come up very much in the 50 Shades books. And it's all the I won't get into it because it gets into gross stuff, but yeah, not necessarily well received. So I guess if the Story of O does it better, then it probably would have gotten the seal of approval from the BDSM community, which I hope so. I feel bad for them. It's such an awkward thing because, you know, I had to write. Everybody's probably familiar with. I was working on Monstro and we talked about stuff. There's a lot of, you know, sadism and stuff that comes up in that, and that's totally not what the BDSM community is. But that all the time they're being brought up in movies and shows. You know, Law and Order SVU. Like he was really into S&M. If you like the S&M people are like, it's not that bad. Like we have jobs. We don't all live in a fucking basement in Tribeca, fucking burning lost little girls with fucking candle wax. Like it's not that. It's a bunch of adults that get into their own sort of real kinky personal shit. So I feel for them because they just constantly get a bad rap, like nonstop, and they don't really deserve it. Punk Rocket says, "Lol, no, I didn't know that. So much explained." Instant Noodle says, written 50 years ago, first erotic novel written by a woman, Pauline Reege, pseudonym. Oh, that's cool. Punk Rocket says, well, fuck, good for her then. What a boss. Nelly Vegas confirms Rawlings turf. Punk Rocket says, I saw that today. How disappointing. Trans does not affect your life, so shut your mouth and collect your book money, Rawlings. Okay, Rawlings, Jesus Christ. I just said that. I thought you were talking to me for a second. I got nervous. Dewey says, bougie, sounds bougie as fuck. Oh, you're talking about, yeah, fucking houseboats, man. That's how you know you're better than other people. You're on a fucking leaky pontoon boat in Lake Cumberland. Oh my God. Yeah, but Rowling, take a breath, man. There's so much stuff you can talk about and so much change that you can affect when you're a wealthy person with a platform and a writer. In so many regards, I don't know why that's the hill that you die on. It's not even that much of a hill. It's kind of like, you know, hey, feminists worked a long time to get their spaces that are their spaces that they can feel safe in, and it's always difficult when you worked hard for something to have to share it, but sometimes you have to share. Does that Does that sum it up a little bit? Sometimes you have to share, especially when the people that you're sharing with are kids that don't have as much as you, which is, do you get it? Do you get it? Trans people have even fewer spaces to the point where they have none, and it makes them very upset, and they hurt themselves. So we gotta expand their little circle to make it larger. They want to come hang out with you. Maybe let them in the club a little bit. That's my opinion. Lol, we live on a lake in Arkansas. Hillbilly yacht. Fuck yeah. Punk Rocket, you are my dude. Dude, there's no kind of... There's three kinds of true hillbilly. Mountain hillbilly, which is a lower tier. River hillbilly, which is an ascendant type of hillbilly. River billies are they have superpowers. But a lake billy is a true fucking king. If you're a lake hillbilly with a fucking little island, like a little shithole island with a clapboard shack on it, you are fucking winning the game. No one can challenge you. That is true fucking peak Billy. It's what I aspired to when I was a kid. For real. Langley says, DeWhitney Langley says, we live on a farm in Central Okie. I'm currently looking for houseboat rentals. Yeah, and I bet out there in the plains, they got a fuckload of lakes. It's actually probably pretty easy for you guys. Where I live, Ohio River Valley, not great for lakes. Most of ours are dammed lakes. We don't have a lot of natural lake formations because this is all like riverlands. So pretty much every lake that you can get on is like a dammed up thing, which means it's usually also the only one in the fucking area. Cumberland, Brookville, both dammed, are the ones I grew up going to. Brookville's in Indiana. Cumberland's in Kentucky, where east, I think, of where I live now. And it's huge, but it gets fucking completely filled up like in seconds. And so, nothing more dangerous than a lake that's a river, a dammed up river lake, because they're usually like they have a big water area and then inlets, which are still big. They're like 200 yards wide, but 200 yards is not a lot of passing space for boats that are going 60 miles an hour because it's a whole big thing. But I digress. More power to you. I kind of wish I was living out in Okie sometimes when it comes to things like that. In all other respects, I'm sorry. I prefer Louisville. Monstro, those were the days, and those days are fucking over. I've been considering doing a single season podcast about a true crimey type thing that would be like in the style of Monstro, which I have to say because it can't be like Monstro because I might get sued by some dickhead. But and I won't say which one, legally speaking. But yeah, I've been thinking about doing something like that because I kind of liked it, but the overall feeling of Monstro just made me feel gross. I don't like true crime that much. I used to work as a journalist in crime and court stuff. I don't know if you guys know that about it, but I was like, when you're ground zero on that shit and you're talking to people who like literally fucking someone murdered their friend the 2 days before, kind of leaves a lasting darkness with you. Where the shitty shit talking-y type of true crime and stuff, and the get it out fast type of true crime just becomes a little less appealing because it feels like a sensationalized version of just real journalism, but like doing stuff that's really, really, really far in the past. That's kind of most of the players are dead and shit. That I mind a lot less, but. I don't know. That's just me. Don't, like I said, always enjoy what you enjoy. It's no judgments, and make what you enjoy making. It was well written. Thank you. You're fucking welcome. Natalie Viegas says, "I want to go on a houseboat, but I live in southern Arizona." Yeah, I guess you're kind of fucked in that respect, aren't you? They probably have at least a few dammed up lakes in Arizona. There's probably, if there's a dammed up lake, there's a fucking houseboat. But, I mean, yeah, it'd be probably pretty hard. DeWinnie Langley says, and the narrations. I love Jack Luna. He's how I found West Side Fairy Tales. Yeah, my boy Jack. I don't talk to him very much anymore. I miss that guy. Punk Rocket says we have a friend that has one. It's fun. Fucking dudette, yo. I hate that word. I fucking hate saying dudette. I know you're female. I call everybody dude, just because dudette. That's rough. West Side Fairy Tales found it through that Dark Topic interview, man. Yeah, dude. Back in the day. You know, it's been almost 2 years since the Uday episode, maybe even longer. It's actually been almost 2 years. Actually, it's been 2 years since I started work on the first Monstro episodes. Isn't that wild? It's been 2 years now. Man, it was me and fucking Jack, dude. We were talking every day. That was wild. The early days of that. We thought that would be like a thing. They were talking about it was going to be a fucking like premiere in Los Angeles and shit and all this big stuff. And then, sometimes people just get on Instagram too much and horrify all of the production companies and advertisers that are part of the production, and then it completely falls apart. And then what are you going to do? Hypothetically speaking, if that happened to some show, I don't know which one it would be. Let's see. Dwayne Langley says, I will listen to a podcast of you reading the phone book, so bring it on. Dude, thank you. I've gotten better at reading, I think. Natalie Villegas says, in Phoenix or Havasu, and those are all tourist areas. Avoid them. I'll talk about Arizona in a second. Punk Rocket says, I got you to say an awful word. Dudette? Ugh, yeah. It's so. I grew up in the 90s. I hate all that shit. The word dudette on my tongue feels like a trapper keeper, a neon pink trapper keeper with a dude on a surfboard wearing big red glasses and going like, oh yeah. That is, it tastes like the 90s, and those weren't good years for me. Good years for everybody else, but I was a fucking weird-ass kid. But yeah, Arizona, man. I feel bad for Arizona and like actual people that are from and live in Arizona, because I know so many people when I lived in North Dakota that were the worst type of people to be around, and they all go to Phoenix and surrounding areas for the winter up there. They winter in Phoenix, and I feel like if I was just a natural citizen of that state and I had fucking North Dakotans coming down and bothering me all the time, it would drive me fucking insane. I don't know if that's the case. Maybe you love those guys when they visit. I don't know, but it would drive me crazy. Dwayne Langley says, it should have been a thing, but I think that one person ruined it, who shall not be named. I'm going to say that I kept my mouth shut and worked. And Snoodle says, real crime has a smell and a feel to those who touch it. One to run away from. The houseboat on our island gets rented out. It's a square box with a barbecue and beer. Barbecue in Australia, that's how you say a grill, right? It's not like a... So that's a thing in America. A barbecue is like a permanent brick thing behind your house that's usually like coal or stone fired, and it's got a big fucking steel grate over it, and you cook on it. But a grill is like that same thing, but you can move it around and put propane on it. Like Hank Hill sells propane and propane accessories, one of which is a grill. But yeah, that's pretty much what they are. That's what they are where I'm from too. It's a pontoon boat. If it's this big, this is like 120 feet or something like that, I think is the average size of them. And then there's a fucking box. A big white box is the thing. And you can kind of walk down the sides of it. And then on top, it's got another like driving part. But there's huge fucking houseboats at Lake Cumberland because rich people go there too. And there's one that we always drive past because it's cool to look at. It's a privately owned dock by some sheriff in Kentucky. And, you know, he's like a millionaire or whatever. And his houseboat is 3 stories and something like 350 feet long. And you can land a helicopter on top of it. And it does. Like, I've seen the helicopter land on it and take off. And that's his. And then his kids have two-story houseboats next to it. Unreal. And it's on a private dock that does not go to the land next door. It's a dock in a cove that behind it is just, woods and shit. So you can't get to those things on the off season unless you drive up to it. The only way for them to get to it is either they go to they go to the docks where they've got like a permanent like actual motorboat, and then they go out to it, or they fly a fucking helicopter down to it, which is so much that's too much money. No one needs a fucking helicopter to go to their goddamn houseboat. That is the most hillbilly shit. I told you, lake billies are ascended billies. But let's see. Punk Rocket says you had a neon orange one. Respect. I had one that I lost. I can't remember what it looked like. I just remember the sound. I would fucking pull it open and shut, and the Velcro would drive people insane. Natalie Villegas says, I love Arizona. I live in Tucson, and snowbirds are the worst, but it is a ghost town in the summer, and the locals are the nicest and sweetest people in the world. Yeah, that's what I kind of figured. Snowbirds, I forgot that's the word for them. Guff. I want to go to Arizona sometime. I had a friend that lived down there for a while. No, sorry, he lived in New Mexico, but still, the Southwest is a part of America I've never lived in, and I want to check it out for a while. Maybe when my Spanish gets better. Punk Rocket says, noodles, that sounds like a party barge. Also fun, yes. Grill, beer, we are so like you Americans. Barbecue is an altar. Indeed. Well, this has been fun, guys, but I've got to bake bread. Oh, man, this is an absolute party. I loved every second of talking to you guys. Hopefully you all come out and do this with me again next month when we do the next book. I don't think I'm going to put up a voting thing for this one. I'll do it for the next one because I've been thinking about fucking Cold Heart Canyon so much, and I want to read it, and everyone's been talking about it, and it almost won this time. So I'm going to use my one-time veto, and I'm going to make the next book club book be Cold Heart Canyon by Clive Barker, and I'll make that announcement in the West Side Fairy Tales Horror and Lit Club on Facebook soon. But this was extremely successful, and I enjoyed the fuck out of it. I'm really glad that you guys came out and hung out, and this was fun. I liked talking to it. It felt like a club, which is what I really enjoyed. I'm glad that no one was like waiting their turn to talk or anything like that. Just throw stuff out. And if you guys liked it, tell everyone about it on the Horror and Lit Club page. Tell them it was fun. I hope you guys got everything out that you wanted to say. I hope that anybody that's watching back on this, I know it's probably pretty late in the stream because it's the end of the stream, but go ahead and talk about whatever you think about what we're talking about, or about the book and whatever in your mind. Just so go ahead and put those comments out there, and I'll try to come back to them and talk to you about them on YouTube. Later tonight, we are going to get. I'm going to put out the new review, which is going to be on Dr. Sleep. So check that out if you got a second, and share that stuff. And if you know anyone else that you think would really like to be in the book club, it's free. Anybody can join. Come in and hang out. New episode of the West Side Fairy Tales, The Three Flights of Mateo Jefferson, is going to come out this Friday. If you are a $10 or more patron on Patreon, you already have it. The raw version is online, so you should go check that out and tell people about it and tell people how great it is. Only 2 episodes left in the season, and then we're going to have a break. And I'll probably be doing this definitely during the off season, just because it's really just a lot of fun, and I love hanging out with you guys, and I really appreciate you stopping by. So, I feel like I've been talking so much, so I've got to stop. I've got to bake bread. If you're watching back through this, like I said, go ahead and comment. Please subscribe, like it, share it, and until next time, as always, stay safe out there. I gotta end it. Boom.